tell me about your journey in retail and then consulting? How did you get started with, the success you had with your store, and then why did you jump into consulting?
The success came from incredible failures, seriously. Like, we were almost bankrupt, and I went to ask my godfather for money. So I brought all these papers, I brought all this stuff to this dinner, and I was going through everything. And he says, Cathy, he says, I love you and everything, but I just don't think you really know your numbers. And I was appalled. I was shocked. What do you mean I don't know my numbers? I love numbers. Oh, yeah, no, I can tell you put a lot of time putting everything together, but I don't think you understand the whole basic premise of how money comes in your front door from your customers, and then it goes out your back door to everything else. And there's just not enough left over in your hands. And so I decided to dig in. And so I found myself a coach and resourced up. And what would happen was that I would be sitting at trade shows. And so I would share some strategies that had worked for me, and they'd ask questions. And what ended up happening was that I found that I was loving that more than the actual retail, work that I'd been doing. And so that's when I sold my store to my sister and became a consultant, because I really wanted people to get that information. It's interesting because it was a client that actually called me, that named me the Retail Maven.
Welcome to the Turbo Branding Show, where we help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. I'm your host, Sue Kirshner, and today I'm welcoming Cathy Wagner to the show. So let's delve into today's episode and turbocharge your brand. First of all, thank you so much for being here, Cathy.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Sue. I'm thrilled.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you on because we are going to talk about branding for retail stores, which is going to be exciting to me because I've never had a client who was a retailer, but obviously as a consumer and someone who reads a lot about branding, I'm excited to have this discussion with you. But first, let me share a little bit about how you are an expert in this space. So I'll read your whole name here. Cathy Donovan Wagner is the founder of RETAILMavens, where she empowers independent retailers, especially women store owners, to achieve financial freedom and reach seven-figure success. She's a former retail store owner, and she transformed her near bankrupt business into a multi-million-dollar enterprise, which we are going to hear that story here in a minute. But through group coaching, inventory management strategies, and the Profit First system, she helps retailers boost profits and transform their lives. Cathy also shares her insights as the host of the Richer Retailer podcast, which is dedicated to helping women retailers thrive. Very exciting. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks. I am so thrilled to be here. I'm just so I'm so excited about everything. You go first.
Good. Okay, awesome. So let's start. Before we jump into branding for retailers, I want to share a little bit more about you with listeners. So can you tell me about your journey in retail and then consulting? How did you get started with, the success you had with your store, and then why did you jump into consulting?
The success came from incredible failures, seriously. Like, we were almost bankrupt, and I went to ask my godfather for money. He was my godfather. He's going to love me, and he had money. I knew so I brought all these papers, I brought all this stuff to this dinner, and I was going through everything. And he says, Cathy, he says, I love you and everything, but I just don't think you really know your numbers. And I was appalled. I was shocked. What do you mean I don't know my numbers? I love numbers. Oh, yeah, no, I can tell you put a lot of time putting everything together, but I don't think you understand the whole basic premise of how, money comes in your front door from your customers, and then it goes out your back door to everything else. And there's just not enough left over in your hands afterwards. And now I quote that all the time, and I think, how wise. But at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, you just don't understand retail.
Exactly. How dare you question my dream?
Yes. I was so discouraged, and I can remember leaving that and driving home. It's one of those moments in your life where I know exactly where I was stopped at a red light, and I was thinking, oh, maybe I should just give this whole thing up, maybe. But then just decided that no, I really wanted to impact more people, and I felt so strongly about what we were doing and how we were helping people and serving people. And so I decided to dig in, and so I found myself a coach, and I hired up and resourced up, and had no idea how I was going to be able to afford it at the time, to be honest, but also knew that I felt like I didn't have another option. Like, I knew how much I didn't know. And so what was I going to do other than, I work with someone who has already done what I've done and is now successful. And so therefore, it's going to be a faster path
Right, right.
there.
And
So
what was the type of store again?
So we had a kids. Actually, what was fun about it is that it was really the only kind of store of its kind at the time. It was like a kids anthropology. So we
Hmm.
carried some hard goods, some soft goods. We carried toys. We carried birthday party supplies, birthday party, activities. Yeah. So it was really fun because it was a combination of all these different things. So.
Okay.
And then we also had a great place for people to stay, and we would do a bunch of events in the store, and we ran preschool fairs and stuff. And so it was really fun. It was really but right, the money wasn't working right. So once we got that all figured out, then we had two stores at the time, but we were able to have three stores and we're able to turn everything all around. And not overnight, of course, it took time,
Sure.
but it was great because we had three stores and I had four kids and all of a sudden I wasn't working weekends. I didn't have to work weekends anymore and I could be room mom and I could do all that kind of stuff that I had never been able to do before. And what would happen was that I would be sitting at trade shows and I would be so excited talking to people and I would find out that they weren't quite as happy with retail as I was. And so I would share some strategies that had worked for me and they'd ask questions. And what ended up happening was that I found that I was loving that more than the actual retail, work that I'd been doing. And so that's when I started my sister and became a consultant because I really wanted people to get that information. It's interesting because it was a client that actually called me that
Yeah.
named me the retail maven, and maven is a word that means a person has a deep knowledge of a certain subject and is so motivated and must share that information with others. And that's exactly how I feel about retail. I care so much about helping store owners become richer retailers in every sense of the word,
I love
personally,
that.
professionally.
Yeah. No, I love your name and choosing it and then the story behind it because it absolutely encapsulates your why, right? Why you do this. So if you could say what were like one or two things that really turned your store around. So let's say someone out there is struggling. What did you have to do that I'm sure was super hard, but what did you have to do to suddenly get on the path towards growing again?
Absolutely, it all starts with the totally not sexy part of retail, which is data-driven strategies and inventory control.
Okay.
And so, people don't open up a store because they love Excel or they love, Google Sheets.
Right.
But the thing is that profit speaks the language of numbers, and you have to learn to speak that language in order to get there, in order to become richer, in order to get that profit for yourself. And
Yeah.
that's for sure what it was for me. And I already loved numbers and I knew numbers, but I wasn't looking at the right ones. And so that's the thing. And now there's so much information out there. How do you know what to look at and what to evaluate? How do you know what levers to pull that can have the biggest impact on your growth? And that's what we do with our clients, is show them exactly what they need to do.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. I had a brief stint in operating an online store and I did it because my kids were young and I wanted to do something where, man, maybe I could work out of the house and I could do online. And this was something new and challenging. But really, the whole rationale behind me doing it was I wanted to see if I could build a brand, right? I wanted to see if I could put my money, where my mouth was and build something that would connect with people. And I think I did a great job with building the brand. But as you said, I was not paying attention to the numbers because that was not what was exciting to me. And I grew and had some great success online and things like that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I was in it for the wrong reasons, I think. And I was focused on the wrong numbers. I was focused on the brand awareness and loyalty numbers and not on the cash flow. And that obviously made a huge difference. So, yeah.
It's a very
Excellent.
common mistake. It's not sexy. I get it. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily fun. And what we've learned and what we do, it's an interesting because what we've learned is that really our anti prospects are those people who really only care about the art part about it. And if that's truly the most important thing to you, if you don't understand the importance of numbers, you don't have to know it, but if you don't understand the importance of it, then, we actively discourage people from signing up with us because you're not going to get where you want to go, you know?
Got it. Got
So,
it. All right. What would you say? We've heard about your passion and your why and why you love consulting and how you want to help retailers, especially women retailers, to grow. But what do you think is your superpower? What makes you really good at this?
wow. What makes me really good at this is that I am incredibly creative about looking at the assets that you have
Hmm.
and knowing what you need to do to turn them into cash for yourself.
Okay.
And that's truly at the basis of what almost everything we do. And I realized pretty early on that I wouldn't be able to serve as many people as I wanted, which is why I've always had other coaches working with me and why we've always expanded and how we built systems that can help other people do this. Because the other part of it is my awareness that leadership is a learned skill. You're not born with it. People will often think of I meant to say charismatic leader and think, oh my gosh, well, they were born with that. Yeah, and charisma is something, but
Yes.
we are all leaders. We are all leaders, and you can learn to be a better leader of yourself as well as of your people. And that's something that I really care about women learning and women seeing and owning the fact that they are indeed CEOs of their company. And what do you need to do to be a successful CEO? What is it? And that is to be a good leader and to be continuing to improve and grow that skill.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that focus. So, well, good. Well, let's switch a little bit and let's talk about independent retailers and what they need to know about branding. So, I always tell my clients that the brand is the culmination of your messaging as well as the experience. So you can't say one thing and do another, and you can't do one thing but say something different. But when it comes to retail, where people are actually entering a space, right? They're entering a brick and mortar store, let's say. How do you build a brand these days? What do you tell your clients? How can they be distinctive and how do they create loyalty, which is two key cornerstones of branding?
And of success, right? I mean,
Yeah.
well, what's fascinating is that so I've been doing this for decade 26 years is how long I've had Retail Mavens. And then I had my
Yeah.
own 10 years before then. And so we have seen so much change in
Yeah.
in that time. And the what is different about the work that we do is it's not as if there's this brain trust that's just sitting around and saying, oh, I think this will work. Oh, I think this will work. Everything that we teach and everything that we do is proven to work. We have tested it or we've seen a client do it. And the beautiful thing is how our community all just strives to help each other. I mean, I just got off our mastermind call and one of our team members, she just wasn't I was telling her that the biggest lever she could pull was make sure that every single email she sent out had a clear CTA, clear to action, clear
Yep.
call to
Call to
action.
action. Yep.
Every single one that it couldn't just be, oh, look at this brand new stuff that came in. It's like, no, this is where you can go to buy it or whatever. So we came up with some call to action. And so when I talked to her a month later, I was like, oh, this must be great. So how did it go? Well, she's always positive. And so she's like, I mean, it went okay. Well, how many sales did you get? Well, yeah, not really very many at all. And so, and it was interesting because as I looked at her emails, I was like, I don't know, like they were okay. They were fine, but I couldn't personally figure out what it was. So I said, this is the power of collaboration. I don't like to do things alone because what I know is that when you're surrounded by other geniuses,
Hmm.
it elevates everything, right? It elevates
Exactly.
everyone's thinking. And so I had her bring these to our mastermind call. And so we spent 45 minutes just going through her emails and everyone just mentioning things that had worked for them and all that. And it was so powerful. And my point about this is that it's not enough for you to be clear about who you are and who you're serving. You have to be communicating it well.
Right. Absolutely.
Have to be. And it's a fine line because like I said, her emails were fine, but they just weren't quite there. You must
Yeah.
run that all the time, don't you?
I run into that all the time. Yeah, absolutely. Because number one, a lot of times they don't even know the foundational part, which is, well, who are you? How are you different? What is the brand, right?
Mhm.
But then the hardest part, believe it or not, that I found is people don't they have a hard time choosing their target market
Mhm.
or realizing who their target market is. And then
Mhm.
when they do come up with who their ideal target market is, they still have a hard time walking in their shoes, right? Having that empathy or communicating with relevance that's going to be attractive and effective to that ideal target market. So
Yes.
it's still at the end of the day, they're still like, well, I'm going to talk about me. I want to talk about me. No, you need to talk about them and what you can do for them. And that's where I see the messaging falls apart
Mhm.
because they're either too afraid to make a bold claim or they just don't understand the needs and the wants of their target market enough to have powerful messaging.
Right. And well, and let me first say this. We talk about how what we teach is that on your website, whether or not you have an online store or, well, most people have both now, or many people, I should say, have both now,
Yeah.
online, brick and mortar. We talk about your About Us page and how that should be a love story to your
Yes.
customers. Like you shouldn't just say, "Oh, I was born and this is what." No, no, no. Like, how did you get where you are? Why is it you decided you had to open this store? Because that is truly how people talk when they tell us why they have their store. They get so passionate about it, but so often that passion doesn't come through on their About Us page, which is why we tell them to call it a love story page.
Yeah.
And to your point, people often don't recognize what messages they're giving about their brand.
True.
And so one thing that we teach them early on is we tell a new client to go ahead and post in social media. What are three words that come to mind when you think about my store or think about our store and how it's most often like your most engaged post that you've perhaps ever had. People are so willing to share those three words, and it can be good and bad, but
Right.
it really is a good barometer of if you have to change, if there's ways you need to clarify what your messaging and what your branding is, because you'll see
Right.
it in all those responses.
Right. I love that you counsel them to ask that question because that's one of my questions as part of my brand investigative research that I do for clients is I will talk to their, absolutely ideal client and say, give me three words that describe this company. And the question is hilarious because people hate that question. They absolutely hate it because it makes them stop and think. They have to absolutely think. And first of all, they have to think deeply, which, everyone's in a hurry and no one wants to do that. Second, they always want to come up with something unique, right? Something different and unique. So it takes a while to come up with the words. But then they also, they have a challenge with the words. A lot of times too, they're like, you're limiting me to three words. I want to give you a sentence or I want to give you a paragraph about why I love this company. Like, no, 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 distill it down. I just want three words because by forcing you to distill down to that, you really get at the true either flash perception that they have about your brand, or it's the one that resonates the strongest with them. So,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
No, that's great. So, for retailers these days, when you're talking to them and they're saying, "Oh my gosh, Kathy, help me. How do we be more competitive?" And maybe we've got the numbers straight and things like that, but how do we build a bigger brand? What are you talking to them about? What are some of the techniques that you tell them on how to brand strong?
It's funny because until I met you, I didn't really see how what I was telling them to do was really establishing and solidifying their brand as much as I can see that so clearly now.
Yeah.
So for the last 8 years or so, I guess 9 years now, maybe, politics has been a little crazy. And for this whole time period, what I have done so many videos about this, so many lives, I've talked to so many clients, written so many blog posts, sent out so many emails about it. Do retail and politics mix? Absolutely, if you want them to.
Right.
That you have to do you.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, what I really wanted everybody to do was to get out there and vote. Do not be lazy. You've been given this freedom. People died so you could have this freedom. Get out and vote. Make your
Right.
feelings known. But for other people, they felt very strongly about one side or the other, but they were nervous to say about it. And it was so interesting because in the first election of Trump, when there was one client who ended up, something happened. I can't remember exactly what it was, but something happened and she got so furious. And then also some local women came up and said, listen, we've made these t-shirts. We want this money to go for this cause. And she was just so moved by the whole thing that she decided that right then and there, just kind of impulsively, but it wasn't impulsive. The action that she took was impulsive, but those feelings were so deep
There.
in her that she
Yeah.
couldn't stop herself from
Right.
making a stand. And what was fascinating about it was, yeah, did people respond? Oh my gosh, people responded. But the overwhelming majority were in the same camp that she was, which
Yeah.
you and I know isn't that much of a surprise because that's kind of what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and that's really what solidified it in my head. It was just was seeing what happened to her. And so ever since that time, I talk to people, I will say all the time that you have to do what you want to, what you feel, is right to do. I had a store who put these posters up when Obama was elected. And she put in her front window is one of those front windows that you can't see through, that there's actually like
Oh, like
there's
a sun glare or yeah,
yeah,
something.
right,
Yeah.
right. And so these posters then were right against the windows, and it was all you could see, and there was four of them. And yeah, she of all these amazing, strong women and people of color in our lives that have all brought us to where we are now. And I mean, not all of them were in our lives anymore, but
Yeah.
past and present, I mean to
Right.
say. And she had many people that came in and said, I will never step foot in your store again. She actually was in an area that people disagreed with her.
Mm.
But she still benefited from so much from saying who she was, because what we know now is like looking at data-driven strategies. I mean, it wasn't done as a strategy. It
Yeah.
was done because she wanted from her heart to support these people and say what it meant to her.
Yeah.
And her business has grown significantly since then.
Excellent.
So, I mean, that's
Excellent.
that's the
Yeah.
fact of it then, right? That's the data driven. Yet in that moment, she did get a whole lot of grief about it, but
Yeah.
I was so proud of her for standing strong. So
Yeah.
proud of her for standing
Yeah.
strong.
So yeah, having an authentic voice, obviously
Yeah.
that's key,
Thank
and you have the data to prove that it works, right?
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I
and
think I'm so sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say that there is knowing how you feel, your why, and how you feel like, and how you feel the world should be. And so you're sharing that opinion. And then the other thing about branding and about messaging is knowing that COVID taught us, when people's doors were forced to shut, what COVID taught us is that the people who truly love you want to give you their money. They want to support you. So I always talk about that. If you open your hands and wave all five all five fingers and thumbs in front of your face, if this is 10 people that come to your website or come through your front door, if you put down your fingers and leave your thumbs up, that's 2 out of 10. That's 20% of your customers. They are always 80% of your business.
Mm. Yeah.
Always. And now the problem is, if you put those fingers up, these eight out of 10, 80% of the customers are the ones that are in your face and the ones you hear about all the
They're
time.
distracting. Yeah.
But your
Hmm.
thumbs, they care so much. And so one of the key things we teach is, what else can you offer into your brand voice, in your messaging? What else can you offer them as a way to create more community?
Yeah.
People crave community now more than ever before. And so
Yes.
we've had stories of stores renting trolleys and people paying to go on the trolley rides and just see Christmas lights during Christmas.
Wow.
Crazy. I had a store that rented out there was a movie that came out. It was one of the Sex in the City movies, I think, like one of the last ones or something. Anyway,
Okay.
she was a shoe store. It was her people. And so she rented out the entire theater and rented a trolley to take people from her store to the movie, and had a signature drink at her store. People
Wow.
loved it. I mean, talk about creating such a solid community.
Well,
That is
yeah.
what's the most important thing now.
Community and a unique experience, right?
Thank you. Both
Because
things.
that's, I think, where, these retail outlets or stores can shine is everybody wants an experience now, right? You can go online, you can buy any product you want with a
Mhm.
click and a credit card. right? But what people want, like you were talking about, is this community, this human interaction, and things like that. And so for a retail store, I would think the sooner they embrace that idea of I can create an experience for someone, that's what not only attracts them to get them in the store, but then keeps them loyal. So
Absolutely.
I think when we talked earlier, you were telling me a story about a knit shop, I think, and some of the cool things that they were doing to create experiences for their customers.
Yeah, it's been so fun. She's right on a river, and so they do river cruises. And
Okay.
it's amazing. Like they started with one cruise in the spring. Now they do them spring and fall, and they've doubled the size of their cruises. I think she runs the equivalent of 8 boats in, a year now. It's incredible. And
Wow.
because of that, now we've had other clients that have done similar things because, right, people want a reason to get together and do things with people who share their same belief. That's Amy Pelletier. The store is called Darn Knit Anyway. And the other fun thing that they do from a branding perspective is that they have one of those, oh, what do you call those little tent things that are out in front of the car, in front of the stores, and you write on them with pencil? Do you
Oh
know what
yeah, yeah. What do they
I
call them?
can't think of
Yeah,
their
now you've stumped me. I
name.
forget. Some kind of yeah,
They use that and have
yeah,
a funny saying on it every time. And now it's sort of taken on a life of its own. And it's often a social media post, but it also becomes things that then end up in their emails and end up in, cards. They've done all these things with it. It's really fun.
yeah.
Another thing that a local store owner has done is that she really, when I first met her, I asked her what her passion was, and she said that she wanted to change the world with her yarn store.
Hmm.
She knows I tell this story, and I leaned back and I said, "Yep, yeah, okay." And I'm thinking, what the hell?
Yeah.
How the hell is a yarn store going to change the world? That was her why.
Nice.
And I listened to it, and she knows that I tell the story. Yeah, and my eyes rolled back in the back of my head, and I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure you do, sure you do." I was totally skeptical,
Yeah.
but no, I came to completely understand. And in fact, it impacted my own worldview about how every single dollar you spend has an impact, leaves a
Right.
ripple. Every
Right.
single dollar you spend. And so, how she chose to spend her dollars in her store was offering yarn and supplies and bags and other things from all these different kinds of companies that primarily serve women and children and increase the opportunities that they're given. And she's been to places to see the impact that these companies are having on their community. And she comes back and shares those stories and then is able to sell more of that yarn. And I'm working with her to put together a trip where she's taking people from her store to one of those companies so that they can see, because that's what people want. And
Right.
about the loyalty and talk about the brand recognition. And when you're spending money there, you're impacting the world. You are.
Right.
That's so powerful. That is so powerful.
That is amazingly powerful. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a second. So we've discussed her why,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
But you consult with startups, right? So let's say someone comes to you and says, I have an idea. I have an idea for a store, or I just want to open a store, right? Where do you tell them to start? Or where do you even see them start? Do they start with a target market? It's like, oh, I don't care what I sell. I just want to serve these people. Or
mhm.
do they start with the product and just say, you know what? I fell in love with this product line. I just want to sell these products. Or do they have like this passionate why, which is I want to change the world, or, I'm going to use it's not necessarily 100% social enterprise, but I'm going to use my retail store to impact the world. Where do you see people either start or where do you counsel them to start?
I will tell you that the majority of people are starting it because they're passionate about what it is that they sell and how it impacts people. Like maker stores are passionate about what being creative has done for them, and
Mm.
so they want to help others be creative. People will start it because they feel like it's a whole area that's underrepresented, that's underserved. And so they want to support, often that's around women and around women's needs and things that they feel like just aren't available at Target or some other place that they go.
Right.
I really find that the majority of people have their store because they have a deep why.
Yeah.
It used to be, like I said, I've been doing this a long time. And so it certainly was that people would open up a store because they just loved to shop. Like
Yeah.
that's what I hear people.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
you must love to shop. As a matter of fact, I don't like shopping at all, actually. I do not like it at all.
Yeah, it's not my fave. My daughter chagrins when I say that, but yeah, shopping's not something that energizes me. Yeah.
No, me neither. But I see how these women, change the world with what they're doing. And I say women, it's not that it's not men too. We just primarily
Right.
work with
Yeah.
women. And it is just really incredible how that's true. And people can carry all the same they can be the same store, like they can both be women's clothing stores, but I have one women's clothing store that is the activism store, is the one who's really, that's what's really passionate to her. Then I have another one, and she cares so much about her women feeling beautiful, feeling confident. Like that is such a passion for hers. Well, like why would you buy clothing anywhere else?
Right.
Except for that, right? I mean,
Right.
so that's what I find, is that it's always different, but that is at the heart of everything.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And
Whether
what's
it's
interesting is knowing that a lot of times you walk into retail stores and you don't feel like there's a why, right? There's no experience or there's no consistency between maybe the logo. The logo is super hip and cool, but then the store is not, just because there's so many pieces. When you have an environment as part of your brand, then it's not just, again, the messaging, but also the visual identity has to carry through to just the way the store looks and then what products you carry and things. It's a lot of moving pieces that make up that strong brand. And I'm sure you've seen it way more than I have as a consumer. But yeah, you do. You walk into some of these stores and you're like, I don't get it. Either like, sure, you've got some products here, but I don't know why you're selling them, or I don't know why they go together on the same shelf and, things like that. So,
and the problem is that so many stores, if you go to a downtown and you see some stores, people don't necessarily seek out independent store owners because they've had bad experiences.
okay.
Whereas the reason that you're going to go to Starbucks is because you are guaranteed a cup of coffee. If you like Starbucks coffee, if that's what you like, you will always get the same. That's the beauty of a franchise, is you will always get that same cup of coffee. However, if you don't want to support that and you do want to experience new and different things, you're going to try all those new coffee shops in every single store, in every single community. And actually, that's not even a great example, because a cup of coffee is still a cup of coffee. But right, I mean, we've all been in stores that just give independent retail a bad name. It's
Yeah.
very, and what, boy, and all of you listening, what I would so appreciate you're doing is giving people a chance, because it is true. Everything, all those memes you see on social media about how when you make a purchase from an independent store
Mhm.
owner, there is a real person that does a dance,
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really is. And what I always say is that shopping local only makes sense if you deserve to be shopped, if you've
True.
created, and I don't mean that you personally aren't deserved. Of course, every individual is a deserving person, but not everybody should be in retail. Let's just say
Right.
that.
Right.
Because as a consumer, you deserve to have an extraordinary experience. Not that somebody can't have an off day or whatever, but you deserve to go into a store that feels fun, feels enchanting, feels
Right.
sophisticated. You deserve to feel something when you walk in a store.
I
And that
agree.
doesn't always happen.
Yeah, it doesn't always happen. And you wonder where the disconnect is, right? Whether it's they weren't creative, maybe, like they didn't know how to envision that aspect of retail, which was to create an environment and experience and things like that. Or if it was just they felt like, oh, they're afraid it would be risky to put money into that or something. But yeah, I mean, from what I've seen and what I've read, yeah, it's exactly what you're saying. Consumers want to feel something, even if it's silly, even if it's just quick response in and out. I love a store where I can go in, get something, and get out. Whatever that is that you're trying to convey to your target market, do it well. And I think I'm sure you have the data to say that it works.
It does.
So,
Yeah,
yeah,
it absolutely does. And it makes it so much fun.
yeah,
It really does make it all so much more enjoyable. And to your point of how, there's, wins and losses in every aspect of entrepreneurship, right? When you have that deep passion, it forces you to push through those losses, those failures, and to truly use them as a learning opportunity on how to be better.
yeah, yeah.
That's the difference.
Well, I'm going to give a shout out to a store that I think, based on what we were talking about earlier, is actually a client of yours or was a client of yours. But I was racking my brain trying to think about, gosh, what store do I just absolutely love? And I'll tell you, every time we go to Galena, Illinois, because I'm living outside Chicago, we go to Poopsie's as the store just because they have done an amazing job of creating a fun environment. It's gift products, it's products for kids and adults, but it all has an element of either humor or whimsy to it. And the way they just set up their displays, it just works. They're geniuses at being able to, point a sale, put the right items with each other to create a little enclave of adult humor or a little enclave of kids' silly books or, things like that. So that's a store I'm going to give a shout out that I think does an amazing job. So,
I was just talking to her yesterday and I told her I was talking to you today. And so she said to make sure you introduce yourself next time you're there.
yeah, yeah. No, I will definitely. So, I got a couple more questions for you here, and then we can, move on a little bit. But what is the difference in your mind between a store brand versus a store of brands? And do you ever run into that discussion with your clients?
I tell you that I could hop on this, I could rant about this for quite a while because
Yes.
honestly, brands have become less important than before. Like, but it for sure used to be really important, and most stores were a store brand. If you think about it, that's certainly what department stores are, right?
Right, right.
They are store of brands. But now, what matters so much more usually is that the store is the brand for the brands, right?
Yes.
What I find happens now, so that, like I said, this has all changed so dramatically, but people absolutely, consumers suffer from decision fatigue. People do
Yeah.
not want to make decisions. And so they want you to tell them what they should buy. It's the whole reason why influencers exist, because if you trust somebody, oh, and she tells you to buy that skin cream, oh, well, yeah, it looks pretty darn good on you. Okay, I'll try it, or
Right.
whatever. And
Right.
so we'd rather do that than walk into a Sephora or a, Ulta and try them and like get all see all those things. Anyway, my point is that what is certainly true now is that the store itself creates the experience, they create the messaging, they create the vibe,
Hmm.
all the brands. And what's so incredible is to see how a store you can have stores that carry the same brands, but they're talking about entirely different aspects of them,
Okay.
right? And it's so interesting how they really then have the brand become, they'll buy a brand so that it supports their own brand,
Right.
right? I think of
Right.
this one outdoor store that I work with, Head Over Heels is their name. And she, for example, really believes in, actually, believe it or not, she's an outdoor store, but she really believes in family and supporting family experiences and all that. And so there's a brand called Life is Good. And it's all about these t-shirts. It's all
I've
casual.
seen those. Yeah.
They are truly all just about fun and
Yep.
family, having a good time, and that supports exactly who she is. So she now is one of their flagship stores. She has a whole section because it was who Head Over Heels already was. Do you see what
Right.
I'm saying? And then
Right.
all the other stuff just supports that. The Smart Wool socks, the Columbia, the Patagonia that she carries, all of that supports her mission. But brands in general individually just do not matter as much as the store itself. And if you think about it, it's exactly because everything is available everywhere. I
Right.
mean, if people are looking for a particular brand, they can go, like I love Jaliska glasses. I love
Hmm.
this main glass. Like the way this makes me feel. I mean, I could wax poetic about it for so long. I love the hand of it. And anyway, but if I really just wanted this, I could just go online and buy it. But instead, I have a client called Initial Attraction in Kalamazoo, Michigan, who carries it, and I will call them because honestly, when I go to their website, there
Yeah.
is so much product there. And so I
Yeah.
would rather talk to Bree and Meme and tell them, okay, so this is what I'm thinking of. This is what I'm looking for. Should I get this? I kind of like, and they're, and they guide me exactly to what I
Yeah.
should. And that's the beauty of, to me, of an independent retailer is when they can help you do things like that. One of their taglines, they have a couple of them, but one of their taglines is called Escape from Mediocrity, that they really
Nice.
believe that what they sell should elevate your experience in your life. And it's different. So it's a gift store. So there's a lot of stuff in it,
Right.
but
Right.
that's what makes it all a little different is what their experiences are.
Yeah, no, I like that. So let me ask you one last question about branding. So let's say you're working with a client and you're suggesting to them that, yes, they should invest more in the experience. They should, whatever it is that you're telling them they need to fix if they're not growing. But some of it has to do with maybe branding or, you're not consistent with your messaging or your store experience isn't supporting what you're saying and things like that. Other than just pure dollar sales, how do you help them realize whether it's working or not? How do you go back and say, okay, you invested in this. I asked you to make this change and you did it. Hopefully then you're obviously selling more, but how else do you know that it's working?
There is, so for example, that customer I was talking about where I asked her to give the call, where we worked out these calls to actions, and right, so it's not working. So what is it about? So then again, I know this isn't sexy, but it really does all come back down to data-driven decisions.
Data driven, right?
Yeah, so if you can't, so if the sales aren't there, well, is there anything else there? Is there anything else that we can see from it, that we can learn from it, that we can use? So, right, we did look at the stats of all that stuff. We did look, and there were a couple of things that had a huge high open rate. So that's great. So then you got
Yeah.
some action on it. What can you use then to make changes going forward? Listen, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I love failure, Sue. I love failure. Oh, no, but what I remind myself about it is that failure is the first attempt in learning. So
Yes.
I know, as you know, that clear, solid calls to action work.
Yes.
So these haven't worked. Okay, what is it that needs to be fixed? And then just keep tweaking and keep looking at the numbers and give yourself a time frame. So to your point, you can't just say, okay, I'm going to do the best I can. No, that is a stupid plan. You have to have a data-driven strategy. So as part of that, we looked at 4 emails that didn't have the results we wanted. So what are we going to do different for the next just four? Just
Yeah.
four. And
Yeah.
just reevaluate it after a month. But in that time, in that month, in those 4 weeks, we're not going to question the strategy. We are just going to continue implementing it until we get to the next evaluation point.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's the way it works. Because to your point, sometimes you can be growing your brand even if you're not growing your sales.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
and that is important.
Yeah, it's important to know that. So just real quick, other than sales, and you mentioned open rate, what are some other key metrics that you would tell a retailer to take a look at for this data-driven strategy to succeed?
I would tell them to look at engagement.
Okay.
So your open rate is simply impacted by your subject line. I mean, which I
Right.
don't know if you'll always see how crystal clear that is, but so that just tells you if you had a good subject line or not. It's the click-through rate that tells you how how your call to action responded to people. So take a look. What emails have you sent out that have had a great click-through rate? What did you offer? What was it? Was it something? One common mistake that we see is that the purpose of every email is to create focus and or urgency.
Mm,
So for example, in one of these emails, she had talked about a trunk show she had.
yeah.
So that was great. So she focused on a trunk show, but she didn't really correctly, not that there's a right or wrong about it, but she didn't go into enough description about what it is that was being sold at the trunk show. She assumed that all of her people knew what the brand name was, and not everybody does.
And
They
they
just
didn't. Yeah.
and also, she didn't say how long it was going to be for. And so,
Okay.
anyhow, those 3 elements have to all be together. So now
Right.
she knows, and now she won't make that mistake again going forward. But also, Okay, so there's that. So those are the two things. But you also have to look at, right, what are your, oh golly, I could like talk about this for like, 3 days.
Well, then I'll have you back and we'll talk about data.
Well, just one more thing though, because that's really
Yeah,
crucial from a branding standpoint, that will in fact absolutely impact your sales is first of all is making sure that you're collecting people's emails because anything that you're doing in social media, you don't own any of that traffic. And so you want to give them
absolutely.
something, you want to give them a gift of some sort. I always call a gift is genuine information for them. So what gift can you give them that they then will give you their email address? Because
Yeah.
no one wakes up in the morning and says, I just cannot wait to get another email
Another
to
email, exactly. Yeah, in the B2B world, we call it a lead magnet and things like that. But I like your GIFT acronym better. Yeah,
same thing. It's exactly what it is. It's a lead magnet so that
yeah,
you attract your people to you.
yeah,
And they don't do it enough in retail. We tell all of our people to do it, but it's not done enough. And any kind of business can do it. And then you
yeah.
have emails, and emails is such a powerful, it is still the most powerful source of advertising in terms of dollars per ROI, in terms of
ROI, exactly,
But
exactly.
the last thing I was going to say too, though, is the other thing you can learn is that we talk all the time about how when we're looking at inventory, we can tell what your customers are voting on, that they want you to carry or they don't want you to carry. And this is true of every single call to action that you
Yeah,
ever present. So take a look at everything you do in social media and see, so where did you get the highest engagement rate? Where did you get no engagement rate? And so invariably it'll be like, that post was so good. How come no one there,
I
people,
know.
idiots, which, okay, but
Yeah,
regardless, they all voted no. So now what are you going to do? So I
right.
think there's so much like that that you can take action on that people don't set aside time to evaluate. And that's
Evaluate it. Yeah. Great. Well, these insights are fabulous. I really appreciate you sharing all those with us. You've already given a shout out to several businesses as we went through the episode today, but I like to end every episode of the show honoring a small business that is just doing an amazing job with their brand. So I would ask you, is there anyone else that you have not mentioned yet that you would love to give a shout out to because they just do such a great job at their retail store? And it could even be multiple stores if you want.
this is so hard because we've really worked hard with all of our clients to have things that are different. But there is a couple of stores. So I have another clothing store. So I talked about one clothing store where she cares so passionately about women feeling confident and beautiful. And that store is called Fabulous Female, and they're in Ohio. And she does a beautiful job of giving women the support they need to help make good decisions about what they're wearing so that they feel so much prettier when they leave, which is
Yeah.
something I think is so important to women. We tend to cut ourselves down so much. I have another women's clothing store in Texas, in Grapevine, Texas, called Ooh La La. And
Ooh.
Sylvia, her store is just fun and fiery and spicy, and she's just hilarious. They do such a great job with their social media and their website. She is really hilarious, and she takes life all with a tongue-in-cheek opinion. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? A
Personality. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
She's all about personality. That is
Yeah.
very true. So the boy, and if you're well, anyway, yeah, there's so many, but I really want to encourage you to whenever you are somewhere, walk into an independent store owner and give them a chance. If they decide they're not for them, absolutely, like we talked about earlier.
Right.
But just give them a chance
Give them a
because
chance.
really
Yep.
working so hard. They're
Yeah.
really
Support with your dollars, right? Yeah.
you can change it.
Exactly. Well, if there's any other stores you would like to give a shout out, send me a list and we'll definitely post that with the show notes so people can, start voting with their dollars or spending their dollars to support local small businesses. So,
But let me also just finally add that if you are a retailer and if you're interested in talking to me, if you wanted to talk about any of these other things, listen, I would gladly give you 45 minutes of my time for free. The only catch being that I would just ask you to rant and rave about how fabulous you found our time together, because I
yeah,
guarantee you that just in a conversation like this, I can help guide you and show you some key things you need to do to increase your sales and to strengthen your brand, as Sue can also, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
yeah. No, it's so funny. We were talking about call to actions and you are walking the talk. Believe it or not, after 28 episodes or something that I filmed, you are, I think, the only one who has given a call to action on the podcast. So kudos to you for that. But yeah, I just want to say, Cathy, thank you so much for spending time with me today and sharing your insights on branding and growth strategies for retailers. But if people want to take you up on that offer of a 45-minute free consultation, learn more about your consulting programs, or even just to find your podcast, how can they find you?
So what's Richer Retailer is the name of our podcast. And because we are on a mission to help every retailer become richer in every sense of the word. Oh my gosh, how did I not share with you all that? So what happened is when I crossed the $1 million mark on that same day, I saw on Instagram, Forbes posted this stat that blew me away that in all of North America, of all businesses that do over $1 million in business, less than 1.9% of them are owned by women.
Yes.
Is mind blowing. So that's really so when I was doing my branding for the podcast that I just launched now, I guess 7 months ago, that became crystal clear as how I wanted to kind of move, how Retail Mavens had kind of grown. And so now we've moved into this space where we really want to support women to get to seven figures or more. So,
Yes.
so Richer Retailer is the name of the podcast. And the otherwise on social media everywhere, we're Retail Mavens. And you can reach out to client care at retailmavens with an S.com and mention that you heard me talk on Sue and that I made this crazy offer that I didn't tell my team about. But I just know in my heart of hearts that it's the right thing because if you are here listening to Sue, this matters to you. And
Right.
you and I do, the beauty of what we do is that we have this outside perspective that you can't see. I mean, it's why brain surgeons don't do their surgery on themselves, right?
Right.
Because you can't fix it yourself. And so I'd be honored to help you.
That's wonderful. Actually, thank you so much for making that offer to my audience. And again, I am so thrilled that you were on the show. I was on your podcast, so I definitely will, once we get this show up, I will definitely have a link over to me participating on your podcast as well. But again, thank you, Cathy, for being here today.
You are welcome, Sue. Thank you so much for what you do about making branding something that every person can understand. And you really bring it down to such a great, easy to understand level and talking about how important it is. And your name says it all, turbo branding, because when you get that branding right, your business is on turbo fire for sure.
Yes, thank you so much. So, yes, thank you again. Anyway, thank you, all of you out there listening, for joining us for this episode of the Turbo Branding Show. I hope you've been inspired to ignite your growth by leveraging your brand. And if you enjoyed this show, I'd love it if you could help me build a strong brand following. So please share this episode and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review. Thank you, and stay tuned for our next episode.